In South Africa, we get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global South. Join me every weekday live on First Post. Hello and welcome to First Post Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alyson Grange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Russia launches a fresh attack on Ukraine with over 100 drones targeting its cities, including the capital Kiev, where several residential buildings have been damaged. 43 people arrested as violent clashes erupt in Tbilisi after Georgia's ruling party says the government will suspend talks on European Union accession until 2028. Two of Italy's largest unions strike across the country against the government's budget plans, causing cancellation of flights, bus and metro services. And Senegal's President Bassirou Diomaye Faye says that France should close its military bases in the West African country, calling them incompatible with national sovereignty. Meta accuses Australian government of failing to consider young people's voices as the country introduces a social media ban for those under the age of 16. Hello and welcome. Our top focus today is on Nigeria. Nigerian President Bola Tinubu is on a two-day state visit to France. This visit has symbolic as well as strategic importance. It is the first state visit by a Nigerian leader to France since the year 2000. It comes at a time when Paris is seeking partners as it continues to lose influence in Africa, while Abuja is seeking investments amid a declining economy. The Nigerian president received a warm welcome in Paris on Thursday. He was received with full military honors by the French Republican Guard. Later, he attended the Nigerian-France Business Council meeting at the Élysée Palace, along with French President Emmanuel Macron. At the high-profile gathering, both leaders pledged to deepen economic and diplomatic ties, with a focus on trade and investment.
We've been working on stabilizing the security system in Nigeria, and we are getting closer and closer. We are doing better now in the area of security. I can assure all the investors here that Nigeria is open for business, and I thank you for your collaboration.
You are making reforms that are unique in your country's history, and your government, is really profoundly transforming the Nigerian economy. That's why France, aside from our historic relationship and the role we already have, wants to do more in sectors like energy and others, in industry, in new technologies. We have, along with the President and his ministers, outlined several new areas of activity.
Now, Tinubu's visit to France is seen as an opportunity for both the countries. For the French president, it is an effort to revive dwindling ties with African nations amidst a series of setbacks in West Africa. France, which was a major colonial power in Africa, is now turning to English-speaking nations to renew ties. Its former colonies like Mali, Burkina Faso and Nigeria's neighbor Niger have cut ties and have turned to Russia for security and aid after military coups in all of these nations. Now, Senegal is the latest Francophone country to announce that it wants France to close its military bases in the country. Then Chad in Central Africa has also ended defense cooperation agreement with France. So in an effort to reverse all of the suffering, France is pivoting toward non-French speaking nations. Macron, who came to power in 2017 with an agenda to revive ties with Africa, visited Nigeria in 2018, Ethiopia in 2019, and South Africa in 2021. While Nigeria's neighbours and other nations in the region are shifting away from Paris, it is still seeking to build ties. Nigeria under Tinubu, who's assumed power in 2023, is battling soaring inflation and food prices. And more than half of the country's population is living below the poverty line. So for Tinubu, the visit represents an opportunity to tap economic investment. But despite all of the challenges, Nigeria, which is Africa's most populous nation and a leading oil producer, is significant for France. Nigeria was France's #1 trading partner in sub-Saharan Africa in 2023. While other West African nations battling Islamist insurgency have kicked French troops out, Nigeria could become a key partner for French counter-terrorism operations. For years, Nigeria has been plagued by various jihadist groups, including Boko Haram. Nigerian president is also the elected head of the West-backed West African bloc of ECOWAS. So partnership with Nigeria could be crucial strategy for Paris to recover from its declining influence in Africa. So will French president's new Africa strategy work? To discuss, we have with us Dr. Ambrose Igboke, an international affairs analyst who is joining us live from Enugu in Nigeria. Thank you for being with us.
Good afternoon, Alyson. Thanks for having me on the show.
Now, Tinubu's visit to France marks the first state visit by a Nigerian head of state in 24 years, with a focus on strengthening economic ties. What specific sectors or industries are likely to see the most significant boost from this partnership? And how can Nigeria leverage these ties to attract more foreign investment?
Well, France has been a very good partner with Nigeria for over the years. Remember, during the colonial times, it was Britain for a few of the African countries like Nigeria and Ghana, while France had many of the West African countries. And that's why today we have in the 18-member ECOWAS, 15-member ECOWAS states, French-speaking countries, Anglophone countries, and more. And since then, France has been, having serious investment in Nigeria. Major companies like oil companies like Total Energy now. We have even in the cement manufacturing, we have Lafarge. Something like the French have had a cultural center in Nigeria called Allion Francais for many years, for more than 50 years they have been there. And so we have Nigeria, one of the first Nigeria automobile assembling plants, which is Peugeot, is a collaboration with Peugeot is a French company. We also had, in the past, we had Michelin in Nigeria, which is the tire producer, which is French. And so many other companies. Currently, we have something like AXA, which is a French insurance company. So we have so much in common. Schneider Electronics, Electrical just did a huge investment in Nigeria. So we have a serious partnership, and it will open more opportunities for Nigeria to have business with France. But I must add a caveat. The French do not go to where they don't gain massively. That has been their trajectory over the years. In fact, the French, I make bold to say, do not go to where they don't exploit you. And so that's what Nigeria must watch out for. And what we had in Mali, Burkina Faso, and was because they were tired of France for over almost 100 years. The same thing. We have some multilateral agencies that France intervention program in Nigeria. You find out that it is French people that the French bring their engineers, the French bring the equipment, the French bring the materials. There's no local content. So that kind of relationship is parasitic. And that is what President Tinubu should watch out for. The French government always try to do parasitic relationship with their partners. And that has to stop. It will be mutually beneficial to both Nigeria and France.
Yeah. Right. And Dr. France, under President Macron, as you've touched on there, is actively seeking to expand its influence beyond its traditional sphere in Africa, especially in light of, as you mentioned, the shifts in Mali and Niger. How does this visit signal a shift in France-Nigeria relations, and what does it mean for France's broader geopolitical strategy in West Africa?
I think in terms of political strategy, France does not come number one, does not come number two. Maybe we may say France is number three, because Nigeria has more political ties with the British, and then followed by the Americans. So France is coming a distant third. Because France has not really had, apart from business connections, the relationship with the West and Nigeria has been a two-horse race between Britain and the United States of America. Beyond business, I don't see how France could actually exert any political pressure in Nigeria unless Britain wants them to take front the burner, or America. But I think Britain and America still have a lot to gain from Nigeria, so I don't see them sitting idly and allowing France to, take over. France will be looking for new partnership, especially. Of course, we also know that there's a gas pipeline that a lot of the oil majors in Europe are also involved in, from Nigeria to Europe. So Nigeria still, holds a lot of business potentials for France. But for political leverage, I don't think France will push more than they already have, because they know that they are friends. The United States of America and Britain are entrenched in Nigerian politics. So I don't think they want to push that boundary. Sure. But again, I don't think that he wants to solidify it, because Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, we call him he's a Niger boy, as we say downtown in Nigeria. We want to speak our pidgin English. He's a Niger boy, because he did his internship when he was a very young lad here in Nigeria. And he could even go to African Shrine. Yeah. He went to a lot of places. He grew up in Lagos, and he stayed some years, and that's why he could even speak our pidgin English. So I think he leveraged on that relationship to invite President Tinubu.
Right. Doctor, thank you very much for being with us on First Post Africa. Your valued insights are appreciated.
Thank you very much for having me.
And shifting our focus now to Southern Africa, where power outages have continued to hit Zimbabwe, a landlocked country. In the latest, a power cut interrupted Zimbabwe's parliament, which was in session and was discussing the national budget for the Southern African country. Now, just as the finance minister, Ntuli Ncube, was finishing his budget speech, lights flickered before going out completely, leaving President Emmerson Mnangagwa and members of parliament sitting in the dark. Now, before the interruption, the Zimbabwe finance minister was projecting a 15% contraction in the agricultural sector this year due to drought, but also said that he expected the country to see a 6% economic growth in 2024, citing expectations of above average rainfall that could boost power generation. But as the lights went out, opposition MPs shouted that the power cut was an apt metaphor for the country's state of affairs. Local media reports suggest that some opposition leaders even shouted that the House was under attack. And reports also indicate that the power cut during the Parliament session was not planned, according to the Zimbabwe Electricity Supply Authority. The authority said that the Parliament had its own dedicated electricity supply, which is exempted from power cuts, and that the cut was due to a lightning strike. Now, social media users were also quick to comment on the incident that indicated the severity of the power cuts in Zimbabwe. One user questioned whether there was no power backup in the Parliament complex, while some others said that power outages were a regular affair and that the government was failing to allocate budget towards energy generation. Now, power outages have been a common sight in Zimbabwe. They have been prolonged as a result of drying up of Kariba's dam reservoir due to the El Niño-induced droughts. Water levels at the Kariba Dam have barely been enough to generate power for the Southern African country. Currently, the water levels are only about 2% for power generations. And secondly, aging thermal power stations at Hwange have become more and more unreliable due to frequent disruptions. Due to this, households in Zimbabwe are able to get only 7 hours of electricity per day, and continuous power cuts have threatened economic activities and growth of the country. This has also been the case with neighboring country Zambia. Now, earlier this week, Zimbabwe had seen a major power disruption, although reports suggest that the reason is still being investigated. The Zimbabwe Power Company said that its national grid had experienced a system disturbance. Local media reports also indicate that Zimbabweans are enduring power cuts lasting up to 18 hours. The Zimbabwe Power Company is only able to generate 1,083 megawatts of power against a national demand of about 2,000 megawatts. Now, keeping the frequent power outages in mind, Zimbabwe, along with Zambia, has been trying to identify ways to attract investors for energy projects and development, and both are now turning to alternative options for power supply. Both the countries hosted an energy project summit earlier this month, highlighting the need to increase investment in wind and solar energy generation. Zimbabwe and Zambia have started exploring floating solar projects on Lake Kariba and are also looking to the west for potential investors. But as Zimbabwe's economy suffers its worst crisis, with its new currency system failing and inflation touching decades high, it is yet to be seen how Zimbabwe is going to meet its energy needs, which are growing day by day. Shifting focus to Uganda, the East African country has been ravaged by heavy rains and landslides. At least 30 people are feared dead, while nearly 100 others remain missing after several villages in Uganda's eastern area were hit by landslides on Thursday. Officials believe the death toll could rise further. Over a dozen have been injured and at least 40 households have been completely buried. The landslide occurred in Uganda's Baluboli district, about 300 kilometers east of the capital of Kampala. At least 6 villages have been affected. Now, videos shared in the aftermath showed people desperately digging through mud in search of victims. Some of the houses were completely covered by mud. The landslides come as Uganda has been hit by unusually heavy rainfall since October. On Tuesday, torrential rains caused the River Nile running through Uganda to burst its banks and flood a major highway. The government has issued a national disaster alert amidst the flooding and landslides. Though search and rescue operations are underway, they are facing challenges due to impassable roads, and some 500 soldiers had been deployed to help with the rescue. However, only over 100 reportedly had managed to reach villages. In another incident a day before, the Ugandan army said that one of their boats deployed during an operation to resolve a taxi stuck on a bridge near the northern town capsized and an engineer died. Now, local officials have also said an excavator would be brought in to assist in the rescue efforts. The government is planning to relocate residents from the landslide-prone area. However, local leaders want better solutions to the problems.
This is embarrassing to me as a leader. Every time it happens, we tell the people, today or tomorrow, we are relocating you to safe land in Bunabuti. After making promises, we come back. What is the outcome of that? The Prime Minister's office, who is responsible for the resettlement land, they remain in Kampala. We remain here with our people. Our minister came to this same area when there was a similar mudslide. She promised us in 2 months all those living on the slopes of the mountain would be resettled. She told us to prepare our people and mobilize them. They have been coming to my office telling me, Chairwoman, we have prepared our luggage to move. When are you relocating us? But I have no answers.
The risk of landslides have increased in Uganda after large swathes on the slopes of Ugandan mountains were stripped of their forest cover. While the area where the landslide occurred is mountainous and has experienced similar disasters in the past, which caused several deaths. Most recently, a significant landslide struck a garbage dump in Kampala in August, killing at least 30 people. While the West, especially France, struggles to maintain its influence in Africa, Russia has had its very own James Bond mission across the continent to expand Moscow's influence. Some call him a real-life action hero who has been the subject of several films. But Maxim Shugale says that he's just a political sociologist who runs a PR firm, and his biggest client is said to be none other than the Kremlin itself. Now, the Russian shadowy operative seems to have overstepped his mark during his propaganda mission. After being arrested in Chad, he has now been sent back home to Russia. Our next report gives you all the details of Russia's Africa propaganda warrior.
This is Maxim Shugale, Russia's very own James Bond, and a real-life action hero, and his latest area of operation is Africa. Shugale has been the subject of several Russian films. These action movies, portraying his life, show the lead actor dodging bullets, ducking explosions, and safeguarding state secrets, which many say is how Maxim Shugale's not-so-regular life has been so far. He, however, likes to call himself a political sociologist and the president of the Foundation for National Values Protection, a US-sanctioned pro-Wagner organization and a public relations firm. His PR firm's biggest client is said to be none other than the Kremlin itself. Shugale, in recent years, has played a significant role in the expansion of Russia's influence in countries across the world, especially in Africa, where he has reportedly been working with the Wagner Group. But this Russian Iron Man posted in Africa recently suffered a major setback. In September, he was arrested in the Central African nation of Chad on unexplained charges. He was freed earlier this month, but was sent home. At the heart of his arrest is the biggest ongoing rivalry in Africa, between Russia and the West. But before we dive deep into the geopolitical battle, here's more about the Russian spin doctor and his mission Africa. Maxim Shugale is reportedly a close associate of Russian President Vladimir Putin and had for years been affiliated with Russian oligarch and former Wagner boss Yevgeny Prigozhin, who died in 2023. In 2019, Shugale was arrested in Libya on charges of spying and meddling in elections on behalf of Prigozhin. The former Wagner boss had reportedly tasked him with garnering support for Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, the son of former leader Muammar Gaddafi. When Shugale returned to Russia after 1.5 years, he's said to have been rewarded heavily by Prigozhin, 1 million rubles for each month in captivity. His Libyan adventure, along with Russia's activities in Africa, were also glorified by a trilogy of action TV films sponsored by Prigozhin. Shugale was portrayed as this tough patriot who's unwilling to reveal state secrets despite pressure and torture. In 2018, media investigations found that he was one of the Russian operatives who were caught in Madagascar for offering cash bags to presidential candidates. Why? Well, he was tasked to work across Africa to ensure that regimes favorable to Wagner came to power and held on to it. This would help Russia gain momentum in expanding its influence across the continent, countering the West, especially France. In 2023, Shugale was sanctioned by the European Union for promoting disinformation campaigns. He has also been sanctioned by Ukraine. Despite Prigozhin's death last year, after which Wagner troops were absorbed into the Russian army, Maxim Shugale is still said to have maintained the same level of influence across the continent. Before his arrest in Chad, Shugale also made a visit to Angola in July this year. So why was the Russian James Bond arrested in Chad? Well, there are multiple theories. Some reports say his arrest was instigated by France, Chad's former colonial overlord. The Central African country has been blowing hot and cold with France. In the latest, Chad has ended a defense cooperation pact with France, a move that could see French troops leave the country. Meanwhile, Russia has been pushing hard to play this to its advantage, and it seems to have made some progress. Chad has recently signed infrastructure and security deals with Russia. Experts say that Chad's president, Mohamed Deby, is playing Russia and the West against each other, to his country's advantage. Chad's neighbors, Niger and the Central African Republic, have strong Russian influence. So if Moscow's Mission Chad is successful, it would stretch its sphere of influence to thousands of kilometers in the region. Maxime Choguelet had visited Chad before. He even held talks with President Deby's campaign team ahead of the May elections. Last year, US intel services accused Wagner of allegedly plotting to assassinate the Chadian president, but failed to carry it out. Experts say that Choguelet's arrest could be linked to this. For now, Russia's propaganda war hero is back home. So, will Moscow continue to rely on Maxime Choguelet's online campaigns? Or does it have a plan B ready?
And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again at the same time on Monday. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend and goodbye.